Welcome to Cuppa Time. Glad to have you back. And this is going to be a literacy focus today. Gail is going to share with us a story about a student learning early reading and what her great strategies were. So over to you, Gail.
Thanks, Linnell. So today we're talking about Sarah, who's in grade 1, and it's term 2 or 3 of the school year. Sarah seems to always choose to play with toys, play with friends, and not read. She's choosing not to learn to read. And despite 6 terms of instruction, she's struggling to decode. When she tries to read, she does know some sight words, but she can't seem to sound out. So when she comes to a word that she doesn't know, she just stops. I've tried phonically regular readers with her, but she still finds them really difficult. And so it's about figuring out whether she actually can't or she won't. And at the moment, I'm thinking she's choosing not to.
Oh, so how are you going to figure out which one you're going to go with? Can't or won't?
Yeah, it's tricky because sometimes it's really hard to tell. And I wondered if there were other students in the class, again, who were struggling with this, whether she was the only one. I wasn't sure, so I sat and listened to Sarah and a few others read. And I thought some were great decoders, and there were some who were sort of okay, and others really struggling just like Sarah. So I decided that I would try to gather some more evidence. And I designed a short whole class assessment for learning for grade 1, just at the CBC level. So this will be available to download at the end of this session with a teacher overview and a couple of forms. I'll talk about those later. I found that I could do this within 10 or 15 minutes for the whole class. But one of the issues was there were some students who were really anxious.
And that we've got to be careful of that, don't we, whenever we're doing assessment. So were they anxious about the assessment or just anxious about reading or everything?
Some of them were anxious about everything, and some of them were really just anxious about reading. And doing anything with fluency was a challenge for them. So I actually asked the support teacher to take that small group out, and we talked about how she would adjust what I was doing with the rest of the class for those students. So we talked about maybe giving more time, maybe including a version with the first letter of the CBC word, so making the task a little easier. She thought that we should try them without the first letter and just give them extra time and maybe some extra repetitions. So this assessment is a screener, and it may lead to more detailed assessment, but it gives me a ballpark for the whole class.
That whole class screener is really handy, isn't it? Before you have to dig down and spend more time with individual assessment.
It is. As a class teacher, I didn't have time. I needed to make sure I was using my time effectively and not wasting time on students who could read, for whom this reading wasn't a real struggle. They were at or above grade level, and they're in my class too. Yeah. So, it ended up that after this assessment, where the students, I say the CBC word, the whole class orally repeats it, and then they have 5 or 6 seconds to write the CBC word. There's a picture and 3 spaces for the letters. So there's a lot of scaffolding in this task. The challenge is to make sure they're not copying from each other. So I had to look at seating to separate the children. And that was okay. I was able to do that given that small group had gone out. After gathering all that evidence, I found there were 3 students. Sarah was one of them. And so then I had to think, well, how am I going to go forward from this?
And so what did you do?
Well, decided that they needed letter sounds, but they also needed to use that letter sound knowledge in reading simple texts. So I wanted to combine learning some letter sounds with some phonically regular reading at home. So the support teacher and I talked, and we decided that we'd train these 3 mums together for a little home program with some letter sounds and some CVCs, and they would be teaching those to start. And then down the track, we'd be getting those same 3 mums in and working with them on pause, prompt and praise. Oh. So that we'd had a little sequence of how we were going to upskill the mums or the parents or carers, whoever, who would work with each child, that moved from letter sounds to reading simple texts. And, you know, the prompting we taught was a variation of PPP because we wanted to focus on the phonics. So we would ask the mums to say, if they came to a word they couldn't sound out, what's the first sound, next sound, say the word. That simple prompting was bringing them back to using their phonics to read a text.
That is music to my ears, Gail. That approach you went through is like, let's do a whole class screener, let's find out who needs more individual assessment, let's pull in learning support. And I love how you worked with learning support. Let's both be together on the same page.
Yep.
With working on the same content. Your learning support does it a little more intensively, and then pulling in the parents as well, but training them. I love that idea of training the parents. I love getting parent support in, but I believe that it's essential to help them understand what it is you're trying to do at school, because they don't know this. They haven't done the teacher training, and teaching them how to do pause, prompt and praise and why.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. And it gives them confidence when they've got younger children. It's an investment in me helping them support their younger children as well, so that when they come to school, mum's read a lot more to them than she did to the older child.
Yeah.
So, I think I'd really love some feedback about this assessment. It's in 2 versions, one with clip art images and one with photo images. And that was a deliberate strategy by me to try and minimize the copying. It may for some students, but not for others. So that's still a caution. And there's several adjustments in the teacher overview that talk about how you can adjust for students who are anxious or have some sort of additional need. I think that's really important in a regular classroom to be inclusive in that way and to work with a support teacher.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Reduce anxiety there. So it's a grade 1 CVC screening assessment, but that doesn't mean you couldn't use it with other students who you're trying to find out their CVC levels of understanding. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I have another version and the kinder version, but we just want you to focus on just this one version. And if you want more, you can give us some feedback. Maybe it needs some revision or editing. I'd love to have feedback from any teacher who uses it, how it worked, and feedback on the scoring that I've put in there, because we haven't got time to talk about that today, but that's in the overview of the screening assessment for grade 1. Yeah.
So that's our quick coffee cuppa chat today for you. We're so glad you've joined us, and Gail's so great to offer a freebie assessment, which I'm sure many teachers are going to appreciate. So even if you're numeracy focused, what Gail said about the screener, the learning support involvement, parent involvement, all of those will apply to numeracy too. So just mentioning that, just because it was a literacy example, the strategies are still going to work for numeracy. So join us on Thursday, or post your questions if you can't be there live, because we want to hear your feedback, what's worked for you, what you've tried, so that we have a community that is just learning and growing in how to teach literacy and numeracy. So
we hope that this is timely for you, because you may want to use this screener to help inform your mid-year reports. That's probably, you're thinking about those now. So this is a whole class assessment that you could use with some adjustments, and that can feed into your report writing for the middle of the school year here in Australia, or the end of the school year, maybe in the Northern Hemisphere.
So bye for now.
Bye for now. Hope to see you Thursday.